The first time since 1949 and 1950. That's the last time they went back-to-back 5-0s. And to do it, they'll have to snap Ole Miss's 12-game home win streak. The last time these two played, it was a missed extra point in overtime that decided it. Our Josh Pate, and also the host of The Late Kick with Josh Pate, is with us. And Josh, in Oxford, I've been to the Grove. I understand why folks wouldn't want to leave the Grove, but Lane Kiffin has certainly been trying to get people from the Grove to the stadium. What's it like on campus at Ole Miss right now?
Yeah, Russ, that whole talking point all week, I mean, look, they played a high school team last week. I'm just going to put it to you like that. So there will be no attendance issues at this game tomorrow. There will be no student section issues at this game tomorrow. I don't really care what time they kick it off. They can kick it off at 8 a.m. It is an early kickoff. It's an 11 a.m. local time kickoff, but this is a big conference game. Both of them are undefeated. I was looking at this thing 3 weeks ago and had it circled because, you know, a lot of people were looking at some of the bigger matchups, but you started to realize once Kentucky got past Florida, honestly, you started to realize, wow, Oxford, Mississippi, that first Saturday in October, that's going to be a really big deal. They know it's a big deal here. So I think that's been talked about a lot this week. I think by the 10-minute mark of first quarter tomorrow, that'll be bygone in terms of a talking point.
All right, so maybe that leads us into this year. Ole Miss 14-2 all-time at home against Kentucky, but they haven't met in Oxford since 2010. How much of an advantage do you think home field will be for the Rebels then in this one?
I think it's a big deal, not because of what the calendar says in terms of the last time Kentucky came down here, but Kentucky's offensive line, and this may be a surprise to those who have only seen highlights and haven't watched the team, has been an issue this year. They haven't been able to run the ball, which the stats jump out at you and tell you, but they've also given up 16 sacks. So if you start looking at Ole Miss with some early momentum here, it may be because they consistently put Will Levis and that offense behind the chains, because that offense and that offensive line, particularly for Kentucky, a little more leaky than Mark Stoops would like to see. So if you've got crowd engagement early on having a factor in this game, that specifically is probably where you see it play out.
All right, let's talk about Kentucky a little bit because there's been a lot of talk about Kentucky and their football program. Is it a basketball school? I thought it got blown way out of proportion, the whole thing, but here's the truth. Kentucky has a chance to go 5-0. They haven't gone back-to-back years with 5-0 in over 70 years. All right, what is it about these Wildcats that have been so impressive to everyone, including the voters?
Well, the consistency in the performance and the consistency in development. There's some places around even this conference where if you were to ask me, Russ, hey, what's the identity of that program? I could hem-haw around, I could fill 30 seconds, but really it would be like trying to nail Jell-O to the wall because you really don't know. With Kentucky, you know exactly what they're about. They know exactly what they're about. And here's the beauty of that. You can go all the way to the West Coast in the Chip Kelly era at Oregon, and you could say the same thing about them. They didn't have to get five-star guys in there. What they did is they had a very, very sound and defined system that ingested what you and I would call three-star type players, backup options for the Georgias and the Alabamas of the world. But when you plug them into what they did in Eugene, or you plug these guys into what they do in Lexington, you sprinkle a little transfer portal in there as well, you get a winning product on the field. They're never going to be on the cover of national preview magazines. They're never going to lead the highlight shows. They just kind of quietly win. And what's been more impressive this year, Russ, is they've done it without what you would think the hallmarks of Kentucky football are. Their ground game's not good. Their offensive line has not been good, and yet they've still, so far, gotten to an undefeated start, and now we'll see where they go from here. But here's what's funny. They're all of a sudden in this rarefied air, which historically Kentucky football has no business being in, where if they don't win 9 games, people are looking around saying, what went wrong this year for Mark Stoops and company? Well, nothing went wrong, man. It's Kentucky football. But when you start to define or redefine an identity, people's expectation level starts to creep up a little bit. That's a good problem to have, of course.
Yeah, and part of that deal is their quarterback, Will Levis. He's one of the best in the land. He's got some interesting personal quirks, but let's put all that to the side for a minute. What is the Ole Miss defense up against in Nevis, and how can they make sure he doesn't beat them?
Well, Will Levis was a guy that over the spring and summer, there started to build a little groundswell of momentum about in NFL draft circles. And it's not that he played any more games over the summer. It's just that's what happens, Russ. Over the summer, there are no games. You don't have anything new to talk about, so people just start saying stuff. And some people said some stuff about Will Levis. And he may be a fringe first-round draft pick. Some people even went as far as to say top 10 caliber pick. Now, I didn't necessarily traffic in that on late kick, but I did do my due diligence on it. And what the feedback was is he certainly got the tools. The production on its way there, but you're talking about pretty lofty standards there. If you're talking about a top 10 overall draft pick, when you stand next to him, we talked to him at media days. I've spoken with him a couple of times. Well put together, well spoken. That stuff doesn't matter when it's 3rd and 7 in the SEC on Saturdays is my point. So tomorrow, just like when they played down at Florida, you're going to get in some situations, not where he has to throw for 475 yards and 4 touchdowns, but he's probably going to have to make 2 or 3 big plays. You could call them bail me out sort of plays because they'll probably be behind the sticks because it's unreasonable, even with Chris Rodriguez back in that backfield at running back, to expect that run game to just click. So he's going to have to bail them out a couple of times. And that, probably more so than anything, is what you have to have him do. And the other thing is, probably not try and play hero ball. Some of the best plays he may make tomorrow are balls where he just throws it away and lives to see 3rd down. So those sorts of things, those are the things you hope you get with another year of maturation. Those are the things you hope you get from a guy with that NFL spotlight on him.
All right, what would be an X factor in this game, something we haven't talked about yet?
I think it's the other side of the field, same position. I think you can go Jackson Dart. You can talk about Luke Altmaier if you want to. Whoever ends up playing a majority of the snaps here, I would assume that's Jackson Dart. But decision-making so critical here. Everyone wants to tell you Ole Miss hasn't played anyone. Well, that's why they've beaten everyone. So it's not like you penalize them because of what the schedule is. But at the same time, you and I both know, watching this game for as long as we have, sometimes you can get into week 3, week 4, or in this case even week 5 before you get your first real big test. And it's kind of like water against a dam. That dam can look really impressive from afar, but you can't know about the cracks until you get the water pressure against it. Now, what we may find out tomorrow is Jackson Dart and this Lane Kiffin-led offense hum on all cylinders, and it was kind of like a building to a crescendo once they get in conference play, and they're up 38-17 in the 4th quarter. Or we could see maybe some poor decision making. We could see some timing and rhythm issues, and all of a sudden it's 24-23 in the 4th quarter. And that's what I'll look for mostly, because I think the same thing that I just said about Will Levis could apply to Jackson Dart and could apply to this offense. They've run the ball very well, which stands to reason that Kentucky defensive game plan will probably be to sell out against that and trust their corners and man coverage. There are probably going to be 2 or 3 plays, both sides of the respective field here, from those quarterbacks that end up deciding this thing.
Definitely a big game. Feels like a bit of a referendum game for both of these teams. Ole Miss, 6.5-point favorites at home against Kentucky. The over-under's 54.5. Here we go, Josh. What's your pick?
So the game they played, Kentucky, down in Florida a couple of weeks ago, I remember feeling like there was a no-win proposition for me, because if I picked Florida, I knew good and well Kentucky was going to win the thing, and I'd look stupid, and I'd have to apologize to Mark Stoops on air. So I made the promise then, if I get proven wrong on a Kentucky game again, I'm going to get proven wrong by picking them to win, because it's a lot less embarrassing for me that way, because I have a long and storied track record of picking against Kentucky. I think that there are going to be some turnovers in this game, Russ. And because of that, I don't think there's a lot of skill in picking the winner. So when you're giving me points in that kind of scenario, I'll take Kentucky plus the points. I'll go ahead and throw a little sprinkle on them to win outright. Not a ton of confidence. I do, however, think it may very well be the most entertaining game in the country. And if you gave me that total in the mid-50s, this is my slight lean right here. That's a slight lean towards the over. I am not encouraging you to bet the paycheck on this game.
All right. Well, if you're saying it might be the most entertaining game, you're encouraging us to watch, and that's good enough. Josh Pate will be with us all day Saturday from Oxford, Mississippi for the big Kentucky Ole Miss game. Josh, thank you so much. And if you can't get enough of this man, which is not possible actually, check out the Late Kick podcast with Josh Pate, and then and only then will you be full of Pate.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.